let's start with our panel. It's my host panel on hybrid threats and geopolitical instability. And since we are going to talk about instability, I'm going to a little bit change the setup of our panel in comparison to the previous one, because first I would like our panelists to tell us more about themselves, where they work, and how is their professional experience connected to the topics that we are going to talk about. And since we have a lot to talk about for sure, let's not waste our time, and I would like to ask Mr. Peško to introduce himself as first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the word, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope we will not get sleep. My name is Marcel Peško, and I have been the first and the last ambassador in charge of countering hybrid threats here in Slovakia. So when I got the job in 2020, I knew nothing about that phenomenon. Okay, we knew about the hybrid cars, but not really what the hybrid threats are. And I have been working on that with my colleagues who are also in this room for some years, but unfortunately today, with the whole anti-hybrid infrastructure in Slovakia is not existing. So I think this conference talking about the personal engagement and also addressing the challenges of the current world is very important, because I consider hybrid activities, hybrid threats and activities of malicious actors against the democracy is one of the key challenges we have. Before, I have been working as a director of the Conflict Prevention Center in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. So we have been dealing with the conflicts in Eastern Europe for many, many years, including the one in Ukraine. And I can tell you a lot about that, but of course, Ukraine and the war of Ukraine is part of the problem as well, as we see in a way conjunction between the military kinetic activities, classical activities with the hybrid ones. So I think we can discuss also this as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pan Kovačík.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kovačík.
Stanislav Kovačík, and I work as a Dean of the Faculty of Political Sciences and International Relations. It is a unique institution that is preparing young experts in the area of political sciences, diplomacy, and international relations. Why I'm in this panel? It is because of my faculty and me personally. We are dealing with preparing the next generation, and we can see how our graduates are working and taking responsibility not only as elected members in a parliament, or some of them, one of them is sitting in the next room, he's a previous Minister of Defense, but as well we are talking about the young generation. They are taking active role in NGO sectors, so that's why I'm supposed to be here.
Thank you very much. Mr. De Vibre?
Thank you very much. So my name is Arnaud De Vibre. So I work at the European Cybersecurity Organization based in Brussels. We are a private-public association funded by our members based in Europe, and we present as well the whole European cybersecurity ecosystem on the private sector, first from the startup to the large groups, but also public sector, university, regions, center of studies, cities, etc. And why I'm starting like this? Because it's for us, we talk about resilience, right? And although cybersecurity is part of our name, we do prefer speaking about resilience actually, because we think and we act this way that the solutions are collective, and we need to understand the threats, we need to understand the solution as a whole, as an ecosystem, and by creating cooperations between a diversity of different stakeholders. We have actually quite a diversity of profession here in this panel. And back to my missions at the European Cybersecurity Organization is that I had the chance, when I arrived more than 2.5 years ago in Brussels, to start with the human factor topics. That was very interesting, because to me, cyber is the way, is maybe, as was said previously, maybe one of the biggest challenges we have to face as a society. It's not only pure economical or geopolitical consideration, it's also a very society thing, and it's important for us to understand that the solution needs to be found collectively, and this is why I started this way, by human factors, by education, and by also promoting, addressing the workforce gap, for example, in cybersecurity, which is important. Now, I'm also dealing with this topic, but mostly now on the investment side, so that's the economic part of it, which is fundamental because to exist as Europeans in this world, we also need to address more economic and market topic, because I can come back to that in a few minutes, but Europe is always seen as a market. It's obviously more than that. And we need to understand as well, as we try to do at EXO, is that the challenge here is to foster public-private partnership, to foster diversity of experiences, to create resilience, which means an ecosystem between the diversity of actors. So I will stop there, but I will come back in a minute to my...
I promise you will.
you.
Thank you. I'm Philippe Michel Clesboer. I'm a former MP from France, and also was the head of French delegation in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and also the only French man in the Ukraine NATO Interparliamentary Committee for 5 years. So this is my experience, dear President, and I could change with all of us, and I think we will be complementary because I was in approach in what you act in your career, and today, since this morning, we talk a lot of a call of act, and it's the real point where I want to join you. That we talk enough, now we have to talk, because we have only thing to keep in mind. Mr. Putin and other threats in this world don't listen to us. Then it will never hear us, never listen to us, never read us. They just watch us. Putin watch what we do, what we don't do. And he move with that. So we have to act or counteract. So this will be my point today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And my name is Iveta Kupkova, and I am here because I was a director of Situation Center at the Government Office of the Slovak Republic. But as Mr. Peško mentioned, all of our efforts are gone for now because many people were made to leave state administration. But I don't want to be doomy and gloomy about this because here I see also my former colleagues from Ministry of Interior, and in this case I want to just say that the burden of countering of hybrid threats in Slovakia today is shared by civil society, and they also had created Nest Institute, which continue in what we were doing from the state level, let's say, and you can also now support them not by just watching and reading what they are sharing on the state of hybrid threats in Slovak Republic, but they also have a fundraising campaign on StartLab, I believe, so that would be nice. So let's move back to you and our topic, because there is a lot to talk about, as I said, because hybrid threats and current geopolitical instability. We have Trump and his tariffs and no tariffs and tariffs and no tariffs, and we are currently, I'm not even sure where. Then we have rising of authoritarian regimes and their cooperation, undermining of democratic societies, and so on, you name it. If you have seen the news in the past 7 days, you can pretty much get the image. So what is your takeaway on the current state, and what can we do about it?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I will switch to the Slovak language to be more precise. Ja som veľmi rozmýšľal.
It's Mr. Kovačić. I was thinking a lot about how to talk and how to grasp this topic. So, what I want to talk about is to share with you the topic that is very close to me, and that's the work with the young generation. People usually ask why we educate people in the knowledge of political systems. Well, the young people need to know how different political systems work in practice. But the main idea is that the domestic politics and foreign politics are very interconnected. We see it in the acts of Donald Trump. There is the objective momentum, and we can see what happens when an internal political switch happens. So that is what impacts the positions of a country and the political meaning. And the changes are so dynamic, not only in our country, in Slovakia. When you imagine how different changes were fast after the change of government, but also in the big countries like the USA, they were typical with the stability of their political orientation that was quite important. What I would like to say about hybrid threats is that we work with the young generation, and we are aware of the fact that the generation X, Y, Z, and Alpha, they are different in some ways. And we should succeed in our way of building resilience of the society against hybrid threats. And the different principles won't work with those generations. There is the Generation X. I'm part of it, and I lived part of my life in the totalitarian regime. And in my times, when I was young, those principles were democratic principles were fought for. The last generation, the coming generation, Alpha, is a generation of people who were born in democracy and is taken as for granted. And if they start being distressed and upset about democracy, their behavior is different as compared to the previous generations. And this is where we should focus. And that's what I want to underline, is that what Mr. Ambassador said, that based on the change of political representation, there were some changes, very dynamic changes, in some other social fields. We are in the Union European in a situation where at least in 5 countries there are governments that are partly or totally composed and supported by political subjects that could be called populist or extremely Eurosceptic, if I dare say. But let me get back to the young generation. In 2030, the Generation Z will represent more than 30% of young voters. So we have to work very closely with this generation, because they are very sensitive to disappointment about the behavior with political elites, etc. When we look at the elective behavior, they either turn to liberal subjects, political parties, or extreme political parties. And if they get inspired by those political parties that we consider the right and for the principles of protection of democracy, etc. So if these young people are disappointed by those political parties, their disappointment can be even greater than the one whom they did not trust it or when not their preference. And this can lead to political apathy or complete and actual change in their electoral behavior, which can lead to protest voices. Why I'm talking about this? It's because this generation will play a crucial role in the future in the way that what political elites we will have not only in Slovakia but also in Europe. Now, Mr. Kleisbauer, the floor is yours.
No, it's okay. I just was listening the traduction. Um, until now, when I was parliamentary, as I told you, I was campaigning for Europeans to understand the usefulness and urgency of investing a lot in European defense. And now that everyone has more or less understood this issue and taken ownership of it, I'm changing my campaign. I campaigned to build a European culture of counteraction. Because the way of building a European defense or Europe of defense is on its way. But an army, a war, is the way of acting. But it's just one way. As we are citizens of Europe, of many nations of Europe, this morning, your first commissioner, Jan Figge, used to say, don't talk about leaders, I talk about nations. And we are nations. And we can act, and we have to act. And we have to act against those who don't want a space of freedom and liberty. And there is a lot of things we can do. You are talking about cyber, and there is a lot of things we can do everywhere in this part of the Europe. Here in Bratislava, in our neighbors, everywhere, there is people, young, less young, who can act. Act against influence, act against fake news, and act against all the people who are a threat for Europe or people who are around people who are a threat of Europe. And we have to change our mind. Not talking, not spend time to talk, but act. I told you before, Mr. Putin, don't listen to us. He just watch what we do. If we do nothing, it pushes his road. So if we want him to stop, we have to act. And there is a lot of capabilities there. There is a lot of, in Europe, people who are able to serve this destiny. So we have to find, and you told about the solution will be an organization, acting people, because there is a lot of group of people who are doing the same thing, but if they are working together, they can give an answer and response more stronger. And it's what I would like to do with you. There is people who can be sentinels. There will be people who can do hackers. There is people who can do influencers. There is people who can do only soldier of freedom and peace every time, everywhere they are. in every discussion, public discussion or internet discussion on social media. We have to give response to the other who are threatening us. I start to be in politics like our young friends were there, with people who were all the time fighting where there used to be a tyranny somewhere, like here. The first politician I follow was Mr. François Léotard. He was the first man in France who used to know Václav Havel, discover him, going in with him, and trying, when your two countries were both, and to show to the French people there used to be a fight here in what happened in USSR. And because we were fighting out of our borders, we could stop or we could constrain the other influences in our country. Seems we have abandoned this way of doing the thing because we were too many Democrats. We thought that if we stopped to influence in other country, they won't come in our country to do influences. But it is wrong. So we have to fight everywhere there is people against democracy. Together, all the time. And as you said, and as that conference said this morning, we have to act together, like a nation. We don't need leaders, we need it everywhere. But if we do nation, we can change the things. It's the same thing for the ecology or environment. If we change our way of life, if commencing by ourselves, we change things every day. With the water, with the pollution, the things will change. So we can do it together. And now we have to act. So I won't talk more, act.
Exactly, thank you.
Thank you. I would like
Please.
I would like to bounce on exactly what has been said, which is extremely relevant and important, by navigating between 2 points. In May 2021, in Ireland, there was, let's start by a short story. In May 2021, in Ireland, there was a massive cyber attack on the healthcare system, on several hospitals across the country. It was in May, and the inquiry for after that showed that an email was opened in March, the 18th of March 2021. Just a simple email. So it was just pure phishing. Like you receive an email, you click on it, and you click on whatever link, and you open the gate to malicious actors. The inquiry showed that, so it was a ransomware, so they ask you to pay, otherwise everything is blocked. The whole system was blocked in, let's say, 10 hospitals, and I remember that everything had to be done by hand, like 30 years before. Like, it was a huge shock, because not only people couldn't work normally in the hospital, but also more than 500 files on more than 500 or more patients were revealed. And we knew that the perpetrator was spied from something. I forgot the group, a criminal group based in where? Guess, St. Petersburg. So it was one of the example that undermines the whole society, because the critical infrastructures like healthcare are extremely important, of course, but also would say the cornerstone of many things. So cyber is extremely important and very interesting as well, because it covers the whole spectrum. And I know that because I lived in Dublin for some reason, some minor reason, I had to go to the hospital at some point, and it was exactly that at this moment in May, June 2021, and I saw actually the hospital at this moment, only with paper, no more computers, nothing. So it was like a huge step backward. And that's what we call operational technology, meaning that there is IT, information technology that we know, but operational technology, which is the impact of a cyber attack in the real life, something tangible. Another example was OVH Cloud, a cloud provider in France that burnt, basically, in Strasbourg. The servers burnt because of a cyber attack. So this example. As a reaction, last year actually, in the State of the Union, Ursula von der Leyen mentioned this, the healthcare system obviously as one of the critical infrastructures, and set up a call for action, an action plan to protect this healthcare system. In addition, the EU regulator said we need to regulate, so that's what they did, and for now we have a regulation to protect this critical infrastructure, which is NIS2, but no need to go too much into details. But my point is that the answer to this thing is collective. On what side we have some consideration. First, to this point, the EU regulates. It's necessary, it's important, but it's not enough. It's definitely not enough. But we have to do it. We protect now the companies, we protect the people, we protect also the products, and we have now a minimum requirement of the products like apps or digital products across Europe. So that's an example of what the regulator can do. But what we can see is that beyond the only policy, which is important, the cornerstone of everything, we saw in the hospital, in the healthcare system, a lot of failures, a lot of breaches, a lot of gaps that needed to be filled. The first, I would say, point is that there was not enough awareness, very easy. People need to be trained, and this is where we worked a lot on, like how to train people, how to raise awareness among the staffs, how to create workers or any specialists, at least a minimum aware of the good practices. That's important. Second, I would say that there is a lot of underexploited potential. We need to make sure that the healthcare system, for example, public administration speaks to the cyber experts, but they don't, because typically for the hospital, they have their own traditions, their own way to work. They heal people, but they don't address cybersecurity as their main priority. So it's a question of priority. And this is where talking about cyber and raising awareness, proposing solutions from both regulators, but also civil society is extremely important, because you cannot expect everything from the regulator, from the state, but that's where actually I come back to what has been said. The nation as a whole, civil society is, I would say, one of the solutions. Why? Because beyond the only public action, you have also a lot of public-private association, basically hospital and cyber security experts. They have to talk to each other, so talk to each other is the key. One of the keys. And this is how you create resilience, by a cooperation between a large amount of experts and think as an ecosystem. So to me, my point is that we have to think as an ecosystem to address the threats and answer not only on the policy side, that creates special teams to answer some questions, to detect, to deter, and to strike back. It's also something relevant and going more and more in that sense in Europe. Europe actually created the cyber response team, rapid response team, CRRT, that was launched in a PESCO program. So some of the program launched by the EU started in 2017 and implemented in Ukraine. Way before the war, also at the beginning. And it actually showed that preparedness was the key. But it also comes from public, but also collaboration with experts in the private sector, in the civil society. I will stop that, but I would like very, very curious to know also from the diplomatic side and as well. My very last point is that beyond the regulator and the public sector, there is also something that is really important, is that we have the risk now to be captured citizen, and that's something we cannot afford. Because, why? Very, very easy. Simple. Algorithm, as we all know, are something else that actually undermine the society as a whole. I spoke about critical infrastructure. I would like just to mention the information and disinformation. Especially young people, we consume a lot of information, and I was born a bit before that, but the youngest, they knew only that. They have their mobile phone at the very beginning, and when they're very young, they're in the metro, and they have they're always facing a screen all the time. Which is important is that we as Europeans, we rely on technologies, we rely on big techs which are not Europeans. And this is actually quite important because we consume something that we didn't produce. Now we have regulation. We have the Digital Service Act, for example. You are not free anymore as Facebook or TikTok, for example. But still, there is, for us, a risk of dependency of a product that is not ours. And the only solution that we had for now was, again, regulation. But regulation, again, is not enough. We need also to mobilize, and I know that in this room there is a lot of schools or universities, and this is the mission of universities. And I come from a party, Mouvement Démocrate, which is also very into education matters, which is one of the cornerstones of the speech, is that there is a huge effort to do on pedagogy for the eldest, but also pedagogy for the youngest, which I don't know which one is more vulnerable, actually, because the youngest are actually, for them, it's taken as granted, but it's not. So I will just finish by that, saying that human factor is also a very important matter, and it's a collective effort to address both direct threat and critical infrastructure, but something a bit less visible, that is, everything about information bubble, something a bit more toxic, I would say, because it's something that we cannot see straight away. And so I will stop there, but happy to discuss also later with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peško.
Well, I was also thinking how to approach this issue, and it's so complicated and broad that it's difficult. But what I would perhaps pick up from you, of course, one of the objectives of this attack in Ireland was to make this system dysfunctional and in a way perhaps steal some data or whatever, but the overall objective was to diminish or weaken the trust of people into the system, in this case health system. So what I wanted to say is that hybrid threats, or sometimes we call it hybrid war, it's about the minds and hearts of people. It's not technical. And these malign actors, as we call them, because I don't think that Slovakia or France is a hybrid actor today. Perhaps we will be forced to do that, but we are not, because by definition, democratic countries are not hybrid actors. And behind every hybrid operation, there is somebody. There can be a private person, of course, fishing for data and making on ransom money also, but there are governments. There are concrete governments who are preparing this, who are instigating that, and who have their own objectives. And the objective is not only to paralyze a health system. The objective is much broader. And we know from the history of the Soviet Union that I would say that classical war or classical conflict, it's always followed by propaganda, or the other way around. It's not separated. So bullets are not enough for those who want to win wars. There is also propaganda in this case, and other hybrid tools, and they are very broad: economic, energy, you name it, intelligence, cyber. Of course, disinformation, manipulation is one of the key things. So I think we need to, when calling for the action, first of all, to recognize that they are with us in a war, using not classical tools, but using these hybrid tools, attacking our minds and souls. trying to change something. You might wonder, why do they do that? Because they are not happy with the status quo. They have some reason what they want to change. They want to control, they want to have more political and security control, they want to feel like a hegemon again, or they want to have more economic benefits from it, they want to keep their technological prevalence or whatever. So there are different hybrid actors in the world. But here, in this country, in this region, we need to recognize who is the main actor, what these objectives are. So first thing is, of course, the reaction, the call from bottom up is important. Participation of every citizen is very important. And without that, it wouldn't work. But you need to also to have a political recognition of the problem. As such, within the EU, we had it since 2016, when the first framework for countering of hybrid threats was adopted. And last December, there is a new framework, a new set of sanctions based on hybrid operations, or recognition, identifying of these hybrid operations by Russia, China, Iran, and others. So this is important. We need to recognize it, but not only in the multilateral level, but also nationally. So I can, ask how many countries in the European Union do recognize hybrid threats as a real strategic security risks? I'm not sure that many. Definitely not here in Slovakia today. We have it in the security strategy, but not necessarily as it was said, basically. We don't do anything about this today. And you are hosting this conference, one of the most vulnerable country in Europe, very much following, propaganda, conspiracy, disinformation. Then there is this value issue, and I agree that we need to invest much more. But resilience, it's not only about technology, as you rightly said. Well, of course, I'm now working in the cybersecurity, so I know you can have a new softwares, firewalls, whatever, but it's again about the mindset, about the skills to deal with these issues, to understand how broad this disinformation is and what it's not. So first is the political recognition as a strategic key security problem. And then the investment. You need to also invest into this resilience. You need to call it by its name, and you need to invest into infrastructure, of course, education, raising awareness, building up the whole ecosystem among private companies, among NGOs, working jointly with the civil society, etc. Do we have it in Slovakia? I would wonder we do. Do we have it in France? This is for you to comment. But clearly, not many Western countries or Central Europe are doing well in this. And therefore, we are so volatile. And therefore, Russians, Chinese, Iranians, Moroccans, you name it, those who use hybrid tools to pursue their agenda are so successful. What's happening in Slovakia, I would say it's their success. Because we are weak, we are unable to take strategic decisions in this area. We have disoriented population to a large extent in terms of values. We are blocking sometimes EU decisions on very important strategic security issues and so forth. So, I would call it, nice try. Working quite well. And there are other countries, not very different from Slovakia, but I'm pointing to the risks. So first, political recognition, investment, and then building up. From bottom up and top down, building up expertise, creating, of course, understanding what's going on. So raising awareness. Then, of course, coordination is important. This is the key word, coordination. Because talking about resilience is important, fine. But what is it, the resilience? You need to act. You need to understand that something is happening in Finland which has impact on you, or something is happening here which has impact on somebody else in the European Union. And therefore, coordination is key as well. So, an identification of these actors. Sometimes we have a problem to even call somebody who is behind that, because for political reasons, economic reasons, and identification of their objectives. And there was said a lot about the future of the democracy, etc. I would argue that one of the key objectives of these actors is to weaken the democracies, to create broader space for autocratic and totalitarian countries, and in a way to diminish the role of democratic societies in a global scope. And that's important that we realize that this is, I don't want to call it existential problem, but it's a strategic issue. Which really affect the way of life we have here, the way we make decisions and so forth. So we need to recognize it as a strategic challenge. And I would really like to see more discussion about that in the European Parliament, in the NATO, in the OSCE, etc. Well, and this will not go away. These actors realize that it's quite effective tool they have in their hands. The more technology there is, the more AI there is, it's cheaper, it's more effective, and the more proxies they have in our countries, that they are more impactful. So this is not going away. So the last point for me would be we need to realize it as a all-European, and if you like, Western problem about the future of our strategic future of democracies in our part of the world.
So I warned you that this panel will be full of instability, and here comes another element, because we were asked to give floor to Maroš Cuník as one of the young leaders who will present you their takeovers from their discussion.
Right, thank you very much. So we had the Young Leaders Roundtable, One Europe, One Defense, Dream or Reality. So we were supposed to be talking about possibilities of the European army. Thank you very much to Alice and Martin, who led a very fruitful discussion, who tried to maintain it a little bit. So the objective was to explore and propose realistic pathways towards a more unified European defense architecture, or that's how we framed it in the course of discussion. At the beginning, we tried to frame some context. So we have the increasing global instability, unpredictability of the US, which underscores the urgency of EU self-reliance, but we also spoke about the public opinion. The Eurobarometer says that there is a strong demand for the EU to deliver on defense. But at the same time, we have noticed that the previous attempts of a truly integrated EU army have not materialized. So the shortcomings that we identified is the lack of unity of EU on foreign policy. Let's say the inconsistent willingness among the member states to cooperate, and the absence of common values or common cause when it comes to defense. So this is some kind of food for thought. What kind of questions we should be trying to find answers to? So a European army, do we need one? And if so, what kind of army? What capabilities are required to transform existing multinational units into an integrated force? What decision-making mechanisms will be acceptable for member states? And what are the key barriers? It's certainly the cost. We have said that some 600 billion euros are already presumed to be given on European defense, but out of it 5,000 billion should come from the member states. And then there are, of course, cultural, strategic and operational divergence between the EU nations. So those are the barriers. What were our proposals? There were ideas of starting small, maybe building regional attachments, because the large-scale or top-down integration is deemed as unrealistic. And also going step by step, focusing on practical steps, logistics, mobility, stockpiling ammunition, and other support functions. One of the key points that was mentioned as a viable entry point would be cybersecurity, because it is widely acceptable and needed. Russia is already conducting cyber warfare against the EU states, so there is a justification for joining forces in this. And it's also cost effective, and it also aligns with civil preparedness about what we talked as well. And then it's also building, well, not as much building army, but building capabilities first. So focus on the areas like drones, air defense, artillery, what the white paper says on European defense. Very important is intelligence sharing and development, military mobility and interoperability, standardization, but also civilian-related things like panic control, civilian resilience, and very importantly, data infrastructure. We are taking the model or experience from Ukraine. So what needs to be done is to rethink the defense culture in Europe, to include the civil society, to think about civil preparedness, not just military tools, but also understanding resilience. And then the question was also about human resources. So we were talking about possible compulsory or voluntary military service. Some of our participants pointed out to the Finnish model as a good example, but maybe it's not transferable to all of the countries or even the entire European model, so maybe it would be more interesting to focus on quality over quantity, smaller but more experienced forces. Yeah, and then we were also talking about strategic autonomy, which is related to unpredictability of the United States, but also the global developments. It is very necessary to try to, for the European Union, to try to reduce dependency on third parties, try to build own defense industry and research and development environment, expand domestic production capability, and also consider security of supply chains within Europe. But yeah, well, one of the advantages of such approach is that the capability building also comes with economic return and industrial value. This is something that we can unite around and also use case studies from abroad, at the moment especially Ukraine, which revealed gaps in intelligence, interoperability and stockpiling. So we have to, well, the value of lessons learned is crucial for the future of any kind of European army or building common European defense. So at the moment we thought, or majority of us thought, that maybe the coalition of the willing would be more realistic in the short term than full EU defense integration. But what we really require for the further steps, for the mid and long term, is the unity of purpose, a common cause. So it's a common cause that we need more than just focusing on separate threats such as Russia. And then maybe also what we really did during the discussion was supposed to be on army, but we switched the narrative a little bit. So rather than talking about building an EU army, we framed it as building EU defense, which may increase the public and political support. So that's what we came up with. Thank you very much.
Great job, and thank you very much for sharing with us. So back to our panel about... Please, we have a question here.
Tak samozřejmě oceňuji to, k čemu...
I do appreciate the conclusion and outcomes of the young panel. It is admirable what they have come to, and I hope there will be a written outcome from that. But I'd like to ask the panelists rather, have you thought about how to grasp the political power in Europe? Being in a void after the change of the approach of the U.S. administration towards Europe. Commonwealth in the past with Australia and Canada, they formed a protective line in 2012, I think, or 13. There was a fiscal compact in place during the Lehman Brothers crisis. So regardless of the legal system of the EU, there should be a agreement with other parties, and and this would deal with the question who would take the decision to deploy the European army, and when and how. So this is what follows after the coal and steel agreement, which was followed by a fail of ratification in the European Parliament. So this would be probably the ball is on the side of the French Parliament to give the momentum to European Union and to help the coalition of the willing to move forward and to decide about a European commandment. So there should be some kind of general commandments of the nation states that would join one common body, and this would create a military position which would be the authority who would take the decision to deploy the European army. I think this had already been thought through, so there is no need to find it out from scratch. It is an excellent question and very complex, but since we are a panel about hybrid threats and geopolitical instability, I would suggest you to address the young leaders during the coffee breaks to search for the answer among them. And unfortunately, the interpreters cannot hear the speaker who is not using a microphone. So this means I would like to have an official declaration. We don't need to speak during a coffee break. We need interpretation. But there are at least two panelists who are very competent. There's Philipp Michel Kleisbauer and Mr. Peszko, who are competent to answer this question. I do understand that it is a complex question and the answer is longer, but and it's for a longer debate, but at least some words.
Let's go.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne za tým dvom tlmočníčkam, ktoré nám tu pomáhajú s komunikáciou. Nie je to jednoduché, keď vystupujete aj bez mikrofónu, takže ďakujem ešte raz veľmi pekne. Takže nejdem do nejakého oficiálneho vyhlásenia, ale
Change with the actuality, the difference of treatment now with the United States, with Mr. Trump, and think we can change. The most important, I think, is to take the opportunity for us, for European, and the young leaders say it too, to support ourselves, our security, our sovereignty, and defense. We talked about this. But we have to keep in mind that what we change in one way can change again in another way. We get some trouble with Mr. Trump. We have to keep in mind that he is not all the Americans. So we have to change the way of doing the thing for ourselves, but we have to keep the line with the Americans. There is more people in America who think like us than us. There are many more than us. Think about our friends from the Commonwealth, from England, from the Britain, Great Britain. They leave us, they leave Europe with the Brexit. We used to know it was not a good idea. When it happened, I always say we have to stay with them cool, resilient, and peaceful. Like when a brother leaves the house. I'm adult now, I go, do my life. He can. But sometimes he may have to come back home, and we have to receive him like a brother. In the same way with Americans now, is the same way in Europe when we are not agree with the leaders of one country, between France and Slovakia now, or European people in Hungary. Okay, but they have the right to change, and one day they might change because Trump pushed us to be European with our identity and not the American identity in Europe. Maybe some people will say, oh, in that way, we could be back. So, what happened gives us opportunity. When you talk about Australian and Canadian and the Commonwealth, sometimes they used to take decision with the army who impact us, France. I think with AUKUS. AUKUS was a bad deal for us. But a few months later, they're coming back. So things are never definitely. And while we are humans, we have to keep this all the time in the memory. It's what I would like to say. So something change only if we take the opportunity to change. We talk about it. Now we have to how do you say? Je voudrais dire enraciner. Comment on dit enraciner? Roots. A certain number of method that we have to make us living the world of dreams and in trance in the world of realities. That I would like to say.
Well, in 1990, after the fall of the communist bloc, we have signed the Paris Charter for New Europe, and which was based on the vision that this common European house will be based on common values, respect for human rights, of course, less weapons, rule of law, freedoms, and etc., including with Russia and Belarus and Ukraine and Central Asia, for instance. How relevant this vision today is. So whether Trump or not Trump, in today's world, we need to invest more in defense. And of course, it makes more logic to do it collectively than just individually. And I think one of the ideas talking about this strategic autonomy was that we have been very, and we still are, very dependent. It doesn't mean that we will end our military and defense cooperation with the US as a strategic partner in the future. It's about strengthening our capabilities to be less dependent on some key military and operational structures and weapons in order to really project our security perception from our own interests and so forth. So I would say I don't see there a contradiction. And of course, in terms of building up these European armies, your questions are relevant. I don't think anybody has answered in today's Europe to these questions. But first, we need to get strategically to that understand that there is no other way around. Deterrence by defense is inevitable because we have here an adversary who is really directly threatening us with the use of weapons. And as I just said a few minutes ago, with the use of hybrid tools. So it's inevitable, and it's really how to create, I would say, the coalition of willing, bigger and stronger, including with the US, Canada, and all others, because this is inevitable in order to survive for the future as a democratic community.
Can I just react?
2 words.
2 words, okay.
Really?
So, so there is, I would like to, about the cyber aspect, maybe to add something else. We speak about an army, maybe there is also another approach, because you know that in 2023, another policy thing, so not too many details, don't worry. It's the Cyber Solidarity Act, and that's a good example because it means that with this policy framework, we can mobilize a reserve of European, actually, companies who can be mobilized in case of massive cyber attacks, you know, something like this. We have a reserve of experts, cybersecurity companies who can be called at any time if there is a need. And this is where actually there is something we can do. Beyond thinking of a structured army, there are other ways to mobilize resources in our societies. And this reserve of company is an example. I spoke about the Cyber Rapid Response Team that is a mobilization of experts in Europe, for example, in Ukraine, to help them to address the cyber attacks they have. Actually, now they have more experts because actually they are extremely trained in Ukraine as well. But there are some potential frameworks of collaboration that already exists. But it cannot work without investment. And we talk about investment, that's my last word. We need to call the political leaders to address cybersecurity not as a burden, but as an opportunity to build a market, a single market that doesn't exist in cybersecurity in Europe, to create the capacity that we need. We have some, but we need more, so we need more investment, collective investment, more investors, higher investments, everything that we have a bit, but not enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other question regarding hybrid threats or geopolitical instability?
I'd like to thank the panelists for an excellent discussion. I also, as an American citizen, I'd like to thank the gentleman for the comment about sticking with America. There are a little less than half of us who are very much opposed to what's happening. But as a Slovak citizen, I have a particular question, practical question, to the Slovak members of the panel with regard to 2 recent cyber incidents in Slovakia. The first being certain schools who have received simultaneous bomb threats, I believe, via the internet, via an email, as I understand. And the second was the recent problems with the property registration system. To what extent, what's the consensus on the cause of each of those? For example, was it simply a glitch in the system, or was it a actually domestic or international threat?
Briefly, please.
Ak môžem, tak odpoviem ja aj z toho školského prostredia. Možno trošku ešte nadviažem na to, čo tu bolo povedané, asi jeden z mála. V tejto miestnosti som bol vo vedúcej pozícii, kedy v podstate univerzita a vysoká škola bola pod totálnym hybridným útokom. a naozaj až v situácii, kedy musíte všetky počítače, ktoré máte v sieti, vypnúť a nemôžete ich zapnúť. Niekoľko týždňov pochopíte, ako ste závislí na digitálnych technológiách a ako obrovskou hrozbou to pre vás je.
And you don't know when you will be able to use those computers again. And we went through this, and I must say that Slovakia was not, our university and Slovakia were not prepared for this, but it was just a bribery. Not an international threat. We were not the first university that was an easy
Pretože predstavte si univerzitu.
victim. And that was an ideal place for cyber attack. You have a large scale of users and access points. So the attack was probably repeated several times until it was successful. And then for several days or probably weeks, they downloaded data. And then we faced bribery,
A paradoxne opäť
blackmailing, and those data were very sensitive, because I don't know if you know that, but universities have do hold the data about the health conditions of different students. So they really focused on this type of data. So we realized that if there is no investment made and if the cybersecurity is not supported on the national scale, the universities won't be able to face it individually. Then we faced blackmailing. That was, well, the idea of this is to overload the system, and then you have to wait for police, etc. But what is important is that you overload all the security bodies, because they're not able to go out to all those schools under threat at the same time and check for bombs at those schools. So if such an incident happens, it is not really taken very seriously on board. And if the media stop talking about it, it's not so interesting. An example from the practical daily life, there was a procedure created in such a cyber threat case, but since those threats repeated almost on daily basis, those who were sending the information, they seem to address the threats to the scale that were at their disposal. And then when it comes to the property authority, it is linked with what we were talking about. This type of cyber attack is aimed to destabilize the society. In Slovakia, in Slovak Republic, when somebody learns that you are not sure about the way your data is treated in this authority, then you tend to be untrustful. So that was the point.
You know, my counter question would be, if you are a director of a government institution and your budget will be 10 million, and next year you are to allocate 2 million for cybersecurity or for the increase of salaries, what would be your choice? This is how challenging the issue is. Well, it's not about the technology only. I mean, the technology is also improving as we speak. The question is whether we are strategically ready to invest into that technology, upgrade of this technology, into the creating an expert base, and not only in the IT companies, but across the board, in the health system, in the cadastre, but also in the private companies everywhere. So the companies who own data, like shops or banks, they don't have an issue with that because they understand how complicated it would be and dangerous for their own business to lose this data. But in the public sector, it's only now becoming there this awareness with this cadastre case that we really need to allocate money for that and invest. So it's, first of all, again, as I said before, recognition of the problem. And for many, many years, we didn't recognize it as an issue. And secondly, political leadership and readiness to invest. In terms of the legal framework, here in Slovakia, I think we have quite developed system, quite developed a modern legal framework, which now have the National Security Authority with then the responsibilities of the large companies, middle-sized companies in that area, and so forth. It's about how to translate this legislation into concrete steps. And with the AI and IoT, there will be more of it and more dangerous it will be. So this has to be recognized that, well, it's inevitable that we will have to invest into that. And there is no more question. It's, again, about the survival of these institutions and the trust of confidence of people into the system. So it's really a crucial strategic issue for the whole society.
Since we are out of time, and also the main message of this panel is to talk less and act more, I would like to thank you for your attention, and please applause.